So, Paul, can you just explain briefly what is your current role? You're no longer with Devon and Cornwall Police. Your desk is in the Home Office.
So yes, my day job is as the deputy of Devon and Cornwall, and that would be where I would be normally. But since March, obviously, with the arrival of COVID and all of the work that we've been doing to respond to it, it became almost impossible for me to carry out both roles. And so in autumn, I was seconded up to the Home Office to support all of policing across the country and to be that interface between government and policing to try and make sure we were as effective as we can be.
Okay, so we've obviously seen quite a marked stepping up of enforcement of the coronavirus lockdown rules over the last few days. This is very welcome to some, not so much to others. But first, can you tell me exactly what the instruction from government has been to you?
So, I mean, all they are saying, as the health secretary said in your earlier piece, we have got to try and enforce the message, which is stay at home. Back in March, when we first went into a lockdown, and the message was stay at home, protect the NHS, people abided by it. You could tell the country almost went silent, and people stayed at home. They did what they were told. As the various lockdowns have taken place, as we went into tiers, the message became confusing, and we all understand that it was varied across the country. You had differences between England and Scotland and Wales, and obviously that meant that the public started to think, oh, it's okay that I can go out more, I can do more. Now we've entered a second national lockdown, or third, I should say, a more intense one. We really have to adhere to that message, stay at home. And that's where the police have been asked to step in. So we are still using that 4E approach. So we will engage people. We will explain to them why the message is important, why they need to stay at home. And we will encourage them to go back home or to abide by the rules. And only when they are blatantly breaching them will we then use enforcement.
Right. Okay. So that's a very interesting point because there have been some quite well documented cases of late. But is the Sunday Telegraph right when it reports this morning that everyone should expect to receive an immediate penalty notice after ignoring one warning? So the police say, pack up your
I
bags and go home. If you then don't, that's it, 200 quid fine.
Yes, I mean, I think that's what the government are expecting, and to be honest, that's what we should be saying to the public. Everybody knows what the rules are. This is no longer about people not understanding what they should be doing. We've been in this situation now for a year. Now, the police don't want to be the draconian sort of people stopping people just as they go for a walk from their house. People need fresh air. They need to do some form of exercise, but when they're using that as an excuse to travel 150 miles to Snowdon to climb Snowdon, for the day, or as another one I heard today, travelling to the coast to, again 100 miles to travel to the coast to see a seal colony. These are blatant breaches of stay-at-home rules, and telling people to go home and then not abiding, I think that is justifiable to then enforce a fine if they don't adhere to it.
I think it'd be hard to disagree with you for those sort of egregious cases. But what about that incident that's been so well documented? Those two women fined £200 each by Derbyshire Police for going for a walk together, which is within the rules, driving 5 miles from their home, which is within the rules, but appearing to have apparently fallen foul simply because they were holding a hot drink. Is that
So
appropriate?
I don't. I mean, I don't know the details of exactly what happened
Well,
or
I just
what was
told you
said
them.
at the scene, obviously. But I mean, I would expect my officers to use their discretion at that point, and to try and encourage them to go home. And if they didn't go home, if they are saying no, we still want to go for our walk or whatever, then you have to say, okay, well, you've been given a warning. You've been to explain to you why it is important. And if you aren't adhering to that, then I'm sorry, we're going to give you a fine. But of course, I need to understand what was said and exactly what happened in that situation.
Okay. I think you're suggesting it may be that those two walkers with their peppermint tea might not have immediately agreed to go home, but we don't know the details. We'll,
Exactly.
we'll move on.
Exactly.
What about Thames Valley Police handing out leaflets to shoppers going about their law-abiding duties which read, "Why are you here?" Is that overly aggressive?
So, again, this is about education. I mean, I think maybe "why are you here" perhaps isn't the wording I would use, but I think the key message is there are exemptions. You asked the question, what are the exemptions for leaving your house? Well, one of them is to go and buy food, obviously, and medicines. Now, if you're going out to buy other um, goods, well, A, the shops are closed anyhow, and B, the purpose of staying at home is that the purpose of staying at home is that you are restricting the spread of the disease. We've got to stop people coming into contact with each other. And therefore, just wandering around shops without shopping for a purpose, getting the food and going home again, you are beginning to create a greater risk of people catching this disease. We are losing over 1,000 people a day. And however much the police don't want to be seen as draconian in this country and policing with consent, as the Shadow Minister said, we have to try and get people to abide by these rules. Otherwise, people are going to die. So it is really important that police, using their discretion, using their words of encouragement, and ultimately using enforcement if required, need to get people to adhere to this message again.
I think you'd agree. We're all experiencing lockdown fatigue now. It's the third time we're here. People are fed up. People are tired. People are losing money hand over feet. And this could be the longest lockdown yet. How worried are you that about your officers, simply by enforcing the law, could end up losing the consent of the British public, and then you're in real trouble?
Yeah, absolutely, and we are very worried, and of course that's why we have not gone for a law enforcement approach. We have talked about the usual application of discretion, encouragement, explaining. Um, my officers are tired of it. The whole country is fed up with COVID. We wish it would go away. The vaccine is arriving. You know, we are hopefully. Well, this last week we injected over 300,000 people. That will continue and increase, and we will begin to see this disease overcome. But in the next few months, we've just got to adhere to these rules. We've just got to keep going for a bit longer. And I know that's a pain, and I know that's really frustrating for businesses, for people. They're suffering mental health issues, they're suffering physical health issues. But if we don't, we're still going to be losing 1,000 people a day into February, and that's just unacceptable. So we've got to keep going.
Some of the government's COVID advice, and this is where it gets tricky, I think, is legally enforceable, such as those 5 reasons to leave your home, otherwise you must stay at home. Other parts of it aren't. They're guidance, which aren't legally enforceable. Now, that can lead to confusion. That can even lead to confusion amongst your own officers, not actually
Absolutely.
not knowing what to police and what not to police. How much is that a problem right now?
So I have to admit, during the tiers, it became very challenging. You know, which tier am I in? Where am I going? Is that in a different tier? Even my own force, Devon and Cornwall, of course, we had Cornwall at tier 1 and Devon at tier 2. And then that changed halfway through. So obviously, there are situations which are confusing to the public. Some of the restrictions such as the travel to exercise. I understand that that is confusing and is open to interpretation. But you have to ask, is it reasonable to travel 100 miles to do exercise? And obviously people who have to walk a dog maybe have to travel to get to a place where they can walk the dogs, etc. So there are exemptions and officers have to apply common sense to it. But at the same time, I think the real core theme of what is being said, which is stay at home, restrict yourself from meeting other people because that's where the disease is being spread, that is understood. And I think the public expect the police to take action in a proportionate manner and make sure that we are actually trying to defeat this disease.
But just to be clear, are you clear enough on what the rules are? Are they crystal clear enough for your officers to enforce? And do you feel you've got the powers you need now, or could you do some more?
So I think the national lockdown has helped. I think that's made it really crystal clear. Everybody knows what the rules are, and are we the officers have been well trained and well briefed on what they should and should not be doing and how to do it. So that's the first answer to your question. The second is about powers. What additional powers do we have? Well, there are some areas which are challenging. So people travelling on trains, there's no power to stop and whereas on a vehicle you can stop a car, you can't necessarily stop someone walking down the street unless you've got grounds to do so. But of course, people can stop to speak to people. So police officers will stop, engage them. That's the first element of the process. And if they then give an explanation that they've actually come from far away to this location, then I think the powers then kick in and officers can take action. So I don't think any new powers are required. I just really think the key message has to be reinforced with the public and that they have to adhere to the rules.
Sure. I mean, would it be easier if it was illegal to travel more than 5 miles unless you had a good reason? At least then you could actually enforce that one.
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, that was debated in the March lockdown, it could allow confusion. But if you live in the centre of London, or if you live in the centre of Manchester, and you need to take a dog for a walk out on an open space, you're going to travel for more than 5 miles. So is 5 miles right, or is it 10 miles, or is it 20 miles? And you can see why a completely blanket ban would have created challenges and confusion. Some people like to go swimming, so obviously they're going to need to go, where I am in Devon and Cornwall, to travel 10 miles to the beach to go swimming and then come home again. Is that okay? Or is traveling 5 miles okay? I mean, and so I think, therefore, it's better that we allow officers to have discretion. On occasions, people may disagree with that use of discretion, and that is why they can always appeal tickets and go to the magistrates' court and explain their case. And I'm sure the two ladies in Derbyshire will do that. But the point about it is that I think it's better that we use discretion. But the key message has to remain, the whole objective of this is to stop people from leaving home and mixing and causing this disease to continue to spread.
Let me just ask you about how people are moving around at the moment. We were talking about this with Matt Hancock. So we know 18% of the usual usage of tubes is currently going on. It was 5% in March. Road usage, 60% of normal times. It was 32% in March. Are you particularly concerned at the moment? We've only had 5-6 days of this lockdown, but are you concerned right now not enough people are abiding by the rules?
Yes, I am. I think you heard one of your, I think probably the next guest coming on, was talking about the R rate. So in March, we brought the R rate down to 0.6. The R rate is well above 1 at the moment, which means this disease is getting worse. So we need to change our behaviours to bring that R rate down below 1 and start to beat this disease. Now, if that requires greater lockdown in order to do that, that's what we're going to have to do as a country. Now, I don't want greater rules. I don't want greater regulations. What I want is the public to adhere to the guidance, start reducing their contacts with others, and actually bringing that R rate down below 1. It's essential. Otherwise, we're going to continue to see this ever-increasing death rate.
Tom's co-host. Thank you for being on the show. I've been listening with interest to what you've been saying, Tom. I just wanted to ask you about one of the things that you said, which is some people wandering around shops without a purpose. I mean, as you say, there's hardly any shops open. But do you think people are almost so bored that they know they can go to a supermarket? Perhaps some are going daily, and that really they should curb a daily shop and change it to a weekly shop?
Absolutely. I mean, best of all, if you can get your shopping delivered. I mean, I know this is tough, and I know this is impacting on people's sanity. I mean, all of us, we're police officers are as human as everyone else, and they have family challenges of teaching kids at home and all of those issues. So, everybody is desperate for that social contact and want to get back to normal. Unfortunately, for the next few months, we're going to have to really bite the bullet, and we're going to have to really stop the behaviour where we're spreading this disease. Now, one of the things the police have asked for SAGE to do some work on is to actually to understand in this current lockdown where the infection is actually taking place. So is it in the workplace? So we know that key workers are still going to work, and of course some manufacturing industry, construction industry have been given exemptions because they've got to obviously be at work to do anything. Now, we need to understand from public health and from the scientists to tell us, is that where the infection is actually occurring now? And with that, we can then take action to try and stop that interactions. One of the things the government are doing this week is to introduce mass testing for key workers. And that's exactly designed to identify where transmission is taking place, and if it's taking place with asymptomatic people who aren't displaying any symptoms but still passing this disease on. So those kind of initiatives are about informing us where the problem is, and then targeting enforcement activity, or at least educating people in those key areas how to reduce the infection.
Because how on earth do you police what you described as wandering around shops without a purpose?
Yeah, exactly. And it's very difficult. And of course, this isn't about, I wouldn't want the police to be stopping people wandering around a shop, say, why aren't you buying it and leaving? That gets silly. I think it's down to the messaging to people. People need to understand why these rules are in place. They need to appreciate that their actions makes a difference, and they need to abide by it. They need to stay at home in order to stop the spread of this disease.
Mr. Netherton, final question from me. What are the calls you're getting at the moment looking like from the public? Are a lot of people ringing in to inform on breaches, or are your lines quite quiet?
Lovely.
So yes, we've seen an increase in calls. Several things are happening. First of all, as you said previously, there are people who are breaching it. So in some of the beauty spots, we've had a lot of demand because people are blatantly breaching where they should be going. In other areas, we've had the house parties and some of the raves that have continued to take place. But actually, I think most of it is the normal policing issues. So, of course, domestic violence is still going on. Child abuse is still going on. We still are dealing with people who've got mental health issues or are suffering from, health, response that we need to provide both in support of the ambulance service, who, of course, are under extreme stress. But also just the usual policing demands. We have had some people who are ringing up to complain about their neighbours, but mainly it's, this is normal policing demand is taking place.